Alright, this is a daily chart of TSLA. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the trigger numbers and some stops and some general rules when trading the power trigger trade system. So let's go to my stream here and let's look at Tesla. And Tesla, and I'm going to be talking about Tesla and Facebook. Now, I already set this up on my stream. So here it is. I posted this Tesla trade on February 20th at 8:32 a.m. And I put thought process. I looked at this way before that, of course. Then was the time I posted this and all that. And you saw it. So you see, I give instructions. Now, the reason I give instructions and targets. Now, Tesla play is a little bit different than the Facebook play, and I'm going to explain that. But first, I'm going to talk about confirmation. Notice that every time I write something about confirmation, what that does is to prevent entry. Like, for example, just because I posted this, now of course the stock went up, but just because I post something, the key of the confirmation is to avoid the chop, the time. Some things may not confirm in a week or two, or may never confirm, right? And so just because I say something is bullish doesn't mean it's a outright buy. I use a confirmation. That means that it's going to want to trigger the pattern that I'm seeing, the calculations that I'm seeing. Now notice that Tesla, when it did crack that number, it didn't fall back. So now the answers of stops. Well, usually a proper trigger trade stock usually doesn't require much stops. They usually just continue moving forward. This is the reality of it. Anyways, anyone who's looking at this is not a follower. Just read this. Press pause on this video. This is key stuff. Let's go back to my stream here. And now I have Facebook up here. So now Facebook is a different animal in itself, because this stock here. So I placed again. You see this? I did this actually on February. This was based on the Friday close, and we triggered. I think was the the 8. Well, let's go to the charts here quickly. Facebook. Now the key is, and now look what I wrote there. I just want to, yeah, this all worked out nicely, right? Fine, okay, but let's go to the charts here. So the trigger number. Now a lot of people could have guessed and says, well, I could have bought over. No, the point of the power trigger trade system is to get into something that's about to make a nice move. And you want to know what Facebook did? It did exactly what I asked of. I said Facebook needs to take out 77 to 77.5 area on some volume to confirm. If this does not confirm soon, I would avoid this. Now it did confirm soon, but I said if it did not. In other words, this has been chopping for a long time. A lot of people were wondering that trigger number was key. And you want to know something? I want to go to the chart here. Look at this. I could tell right away. First of all, I could tell by the volume right away in the morning that something was up, and this is what excites me. It's when I see the volume and the right price action excites me. It's almost like it's a given, and it was a winning trade, and you didn't even need to stop. Now I'm going to talk about stops, but a good trigger trade usually requires no stops. It's just a matter of managing when to exit the price, taking some profits. But usually a 2-point stop is usually something you need. However, the trigger trades that I talk about is to prevent you from needing a stop. Now, but Tesla is a different animal. I want to show that example. But as it stands, as soon as the stock triggered, if we go, what was the day here? We triggered on the 19th, right? So let's go to the 10-minute chart, right? So where is it? 19th, right? Look at this. The first 10 minutes, it was very apparent to me. Look at this. The first 10 minutes, it took 10 minutes to trigger. Look at the volume, right? It's higher volume than usual, right? So, anyways, it did what I said. But if the volume isn't there and price action goes, it's usually not the greatest sign. And usually good trigger trade stocks, they usually happen within the first half an hour to an hour of trading. Usually the best ones in the first half an hour, sometimes the first 10 minutes. It's very fast. So the best trigger trade stocks. On general, 90% of the time, they trigger within the first 30 minutes to the first hour. Tesla, TSLA. Now, Tesla, When you have bottom plays, sometimes stocks play a bit of a game. So, for example, I talked about a Tesla play back a few days, back here on the 26th. Not just this one over here, but before. And what happened was the stock happened to pull back. Now, some bears would have said, "Hey, power trigger trade was wrong. The stock went back." No, power trigger trade was correct because look at the distance of how much it went up. I was right about this. Just because the stock pulls back. Now, does it require a stop? Sure, because I entered at 206. I took a small loss at 204. But as I said, plain to you people, usually the best triggered stocks don't require any stop at all. They just go boom, it just follows through. And there's why you need to pay attention to the trigger number and the volume. If you don't understand, if you're not looking for the right kind of volume and trigger number, you're playing a guessing game, and then we require bigger stops. But now, in this case, this stock here never really had, when I entered this thing, never really had the volume that I wanted. And if so, when we broke out again, which was on this day here, there was more volume than any other days. Not a big deal, okay. And then it had to move, but this was a bottom and play pattern. Now this one is totally different from the earnings. We have the stronger volume, and I said that according to the pattern of this, that we can go to 240, but does that mean that this goes straight to 240? No. This kind of breakout play could come and test again over here, and I'm still not wrong. My opinion is that this, even if we were to pull back, this is why you need stops in place, right? You're going to break even at the entry point, or you're leaving a 2-point stop below the thing. But the second entry, sometimes some of these breakout plays, bottom plays, requires the second entry. It did so here. For example, I had it. In fact, it was a bit of an error on my part, but this entry was better alignment. Okay, so the point is when they break out properly, and this was a better breakout play. This is my point. This was kind of a bit of an error on my part, which I took a loss for. But this was a better one. And you notice we did not need a stop. It got to the targets. You need to take profits. And then if you want to ride it longer, a person then would trail the stop and you get out. And so there's a lot of variables about stop. But I wanted to talk that sometimes when you get into a stock, you don't need more than a 2-point stops, because the odds of my statistics show that when we hit the trigger numbers properly with the volume, you get this kind of move. Now it's a matter of taking profits and riding the rest for the main goals, the targets. I mean, I believe this stock will easily go higher, but we have a resistance coming up now that can easily be taken out. The odds favor this to want to go higher. Now this is a pattern that's a long time in the making. Okay, but I looked at when I came out with the 77 numbers, and let's take a look at this again. I mean, let's look at the numbers I wrote here. This is the Tesla, this is the Facebook, right? Here you're seeing it at 75, 74. Why not buy it here? Because we needed the power. The point of the trigger numbers is to help us not need stops. You always if you get into a triggered stock and it pulls back more than $2, something's wrong. So you need to take, you don't want to hold and hope and pray. A proper trigger stock 9 out of 10 times will thrust forward and not look back. That's what the message here. Now when I do a site in the future, I could help out more on the things, but these general rules in this video is that the way I calculated these trigger points is to minimize false movements, because stocks are chopping a lot, right? I mean, what's Facebook doing here? It's chopping, right? Well, sorry, it's chopping, right? Up, down, up, down. Finally, there's a bit of a move, but they pulled it back, right? Stops are a general rule, 2-point stops, and sometimes we need less of a stop. You don't need so much of a stop. There's too many variables about stops, but in general, 2-point stop from the entry is a general rule. But if you follow the trigger numbers, and if you decide to get into a stock too early, you might get stopped out, right? If the volume wasn't present, so in reality, the way I designed the system is that if it hits the trigger numbers, as soon as this stock showed power, look at this. So did Tesla. Those breakouts worked smoothly. Mastercard as well, right? Because the volume was present at the trigger number. That's the key here. The volume. This is what I find works 9 out of 10 times. In other words, the odds are extremely in your favor. Nothing's 100%, and that's why you need to always use stops, because it's, when something, that also depends on market conditions, right? But when a stock triggers properly and happens to fall back too much, better to take a small loss and look for a re-entry or avoid the stock completely, because usually a proper breakout stock just breaks out forward. Just straightforward. That's what the odds show me, and that's my message here to you. But part of trading is taking losses. Of course, the point of this power trigger trade system is to minimize losses and to look for stocks that are ready to break out and move in the favor. But again, sometimes stocks are kind of lazy, don't move up too much, and therefore you need to then tighten your stops. What I'm trying to say is that there are many variables for the stops. It's not a simple answer, but trying to enter the right breakpoints minimizes the need of stops. But obviously you always need stops, and 2-point stop, meaning the price moves 2 point against, and then that's whatever the value of the option is at the time you take a loss on. Or sometimes you take a $1 loss on an option. You buy each option's $2. You're taking $1 off of that option value, for example. But again, it really depends. Maybe you only need half 50 cents off the option. It really depends on the price of the stock. You have to look at how much the stock moves, right? So stops are there's a lot of variables for stops. There's not one answer, but usually the rules that I develop are to minimize the need of stops, but always use a stop. And the thing about, like Tesla it doesn't mean that just because it broke out and confirmed doesn't mean it's going to go straight to 240, because it's not the same type of setup as Facebook. What I do believe is that TSLA is in favor of going to 240 as one, maybe even higher, but that's, these are calculated, and the pattern is in play, but it doesn't mean that they may not want to test again. Now, if they want to test again, one would take small profits and then look for re-entry, right? Again, you want to at least have a 2-point stop. Anybody who got into the stock on the trigger point, you're in the money, right? I mean, it's as simple as that. Now it's a matter of taking some small profits and riding the rest. These are general rules, but there's so many. I bet it's beyond the scope of this video. But the point of the trigger numbers is to prevent you from losing money. Is that every single trigger trade stock, from Apple to MasterCard to Tesla to Facebook to what was the other one called, UNH. Once it hit the trigger numbers, they're required no stop. The stock simply bolted forward. There's why the trigger numbers are there to protect you. If you go before the trigger numbers, before the instructions, then you are causing yourself harm, because it's guessing. I don't guess. I've studied this facts that I rather go into. That's why hence power trigger trade. The system requires us to go in with the power. Anything else is a guess. That's the message to you. This is why I post these instructions. Right? At the same time, if a stock is acting lazy, one could take profits and leave it alone. But if you want to hit big winners, the managing trade is an important thing, and there's so many variables. Let me take Boeing, for example, BA. I talked about BA back then, and I was talking about a 144 targets. Well, this thing exceeded my targets. I mean, look where it went. But I identify this as a powerful moving stock, and everybody, as a chart witness follower, has witnessed what I called the stock to do. Now, I knew this was a bullish setup back in the day, right? But it took the earnings to really confirm. This one was a bit tricky. It took the earnings to confirm. What was the earnings day? I think it was this day here. I mean, this is just bolted the pattern and I'm like, when I identify stuff, it's a matter of when they trigger properly. You go in. If they don't, and again, the volume came in. The best triggered part of a BA was the earnings day. But anyways, so there you have it. Listen to this video a couple of times. I really make some important points, but the important point is the trigger points. That they put the odds in your favor. If you go in before the trigger points, I didn't go into Facebook until Facebook confirmed. Facebook showed the power. I could tell in the first 10 minutes that it was good. I could tell by the volume action, the strength of power towards the trigger number, and that's why it was an easy win. It was very clear. I could tell right away. Sometimes it doesn't take. It takes a little longer. Sometimes it becomes more clear. Like MasterCard took a little longer to be clear. It took half an hour. Sometimes they take up an hour to become very clear that it's a buy. Thanks for listening. Like the video.